Hello, I am Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute fellow at the University of California, Irvine. Here I bring you the highlights of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas war. It's currently evening of January 4th, 2024 in the United States, the morning of January 5th, 2024 in the Middle East. Before I get started, I will note that for the next 3 days until the morning of January 8th, I will be traveling, and thus I will not be able to necessarily upload a summary every day. If there are updates that are critical, I will upload them to my Twitter account, that is at Alon Burstein. Otherwise, we'll be back on January 8th. Starting with the hostage situation, the IDF reported today that 3 more Israelis that have been defined missing since October 7th are now confirmed kidnapped and held by Hamas in the Gaza Strip. One of these is confirmed killed. He was killed on October 7th and his body is being held by Hamas. 2 others are reported presumably alive, since there was no report about their condition. This brings the total number of hostages that are held in the Gaza Strip to 136. This includes those who have already been identified as dead and their bodies are being held. The numbers are between 25 and 30 of those that are confirmed dead. The rest are presumed still alive. Moving on to the ongoing fighting, rockets and mortars were sent from the Gaza Strip, targeting primarily the southern parts of Israel in the last 24 hours. A missile was launched towards an Israeli helicopter that missed and hit a clinic in the area surrounding the Gaza Strip. No injuries were reported there. Rockets were also sent towards the areas of Sderot, Ivim, Nir Am, and there was a barrage of rockets towards Ashkelon for the first time in over a week and a half. Moving on to the fighting within the Gaza Strip, there was a lot of activity reported primarily in the central parts of the Gaza Strip and the southern parts of the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. In central Gaza Strip, a substantial underground facility of Hamas, as well as military compounds, were uncovered by the IDF. These included weapons manufacturing areas, as well as storage houses for missiles, explosives, rockets. It was also reported that the entire area was very heavily fortified with very reinforced concrete doors that were also rigged with explosives. It was not reported where this was exactly. However, deducing from which units were operating, this was likely the El Bureid refugee camp, and that is important because that indicates the IDF is continuing to expand its activity in this area. Other news relating to the center of the Gaza Strip, substantial bombings were reported in the Deir el-Balach area as well as in El Maghazi refugee camp, which was also hit by a lot of artillery fire throughout the last 24 hours. Other news, Al Jazeera reported that 5 Palestinians were killed in an attack against a car in Nuseirat refugee camp. Like I often state, this is commonly an attempted targeted assassination. Unclear, there's no reports on who those 5 people in the car were. We may find out tomorrow. Moving on to the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, there was heavy battles reported throughout Han Yunis, with the IDF reportedly trying to secure both the Kisufim corridor and the Tanjir corridor. These are the different roads that connect Han Yunis to the eastern parts and to the border with Israel, as well as the Salahuddin Road and the north to south border of the Gaza Strip. According to reports, the IDF is trying to establish strongholds along these different corridors. Presumably, again, as it moves to the next phase of the war, it wants to have very tight control of the way it is dividing up the Gaza Strip. There was heavy gun battles reported with Hamas's northern Han Yunis brigade as well as their Gaza brigade throughout Han Yunis, and major bombardments were reported throughout the city, including against the mosque in the area. Other news from the Gaza Strip, a senior Palestinian Islamic Jihad operative, Mamdouh Lulu, who was a man in charge of operations in the northern part of the Gaza Strip of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, was assassinated in the last 24 hours. Regarding casualties, 5 IDF soldiers are reported badly injured in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of IDF soldiers that have been injured in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began to over 1,000. The number remains at 171 IDF soldiers that have been killed. The Palestinian Health Ministry is reporting 125 Palestinians that have been killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of Palestinians that have been killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began to 22,438, with 57,614 reported injured. Moving on to the humanitarian situation, the IDF reported that 187 trucks carrying food, water, and medical supplies entered the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. Critically, it reported that 97 of these entered through the Kerem Shalom crossing, while 88 entered through the Rafah crossing after they were inspected in Nitzana. This is important because this is the first time we are hearing that the Kerem Shalom crossing is up and running. Hopefully, this will allow for more expedited entry of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. However, it is unclear if this is a one-off or if this is going to be a continuous everyday entry. Moving on to the West Bank, the IDF concluded a 40-hour operation in the Nur Shams refugee camp in Tulkarem. Hundreds of buildings and houses were searched in this operation that involved 5 different divisions of the IDF. They uncovered substantial weaponry and different military equipment. They also found rigged explosive building identified in the lower floor of an UNRWA kindergarten. 2 weapons labs are also reported destroyed and 11 Palestinians arrested. According to reports, there were major gun battles that occurred. There was no reports of any fatalities that occurred in this operation. The IDF is reporting 1 soldier injured. Palestinians are reporting several Palestinians injured. There are no numbers that are actually reported. 1 Palestinian is reported killed in the last 24 hours in the Tamun area north of Nablus as part of an IDF activity in the area and confrontations that erupted. Moving on to the northern parts of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon, rockets and missiles were sent from Lebanon towards Israel, though less than in previous days. These targeted the areas of Menara in the Upper Galilee, as well as Misgav-Am and Shtula. The IDF retaliations, including substantial retaliations against different border towns along the border between Israel and Lebanon. Other retaliations are also reported in the Maruna Ras area, where major explosions were seen and reported in different news outlets. There were also retaliations reported in Ita Shabab and Yarun against different infrastructure of Hezbollah, as well as launching sites and Hezbollah units. Al-Manar also reported that in an IDF retaliation in the El Hiam area, the IDF used white phosphorus bombs. This has been a source of contention in the past, as the IDF came under criticism for accusations of using such bombs. The IDF said that it has such bombs but is not using them in residential areas. This also led to altercations with the United States regarding if these are bombs that are supplied by the United States. Right now, Al-Manar, which is affiliated with Hezbollah, has made that accusation against an IDF retaliation in the El Hiam area. Moving on to some of the regional developments, Islamic resistance in Iraq stated that they attacked 2 U.S. bases in Syria, the El Amr base and the El Rahba base. These attacks were carried out with drones. No report was given by the United States. In turn, the U.S. reported that it attacked one of the umbrella organizations of the militias that are operating in Iraq. This is the Al-Hashd Ash'abi militia, stating that a prominent figure in one of the militias was killed and 4 other people are reported killed and several injured. Al-Arabi al-Jadid reported that the commander that was killed was known as Abu Tukua, who is one of the leaders of the Al-Nujba militia. This is not a militia that's reported on often. It operates primarily in Iraq rather than in Syria. However, it is one of the more prominent militias. According to reports, the United States carried out this operation with a drone. Several people were killed, including the commander of that militia. Other regional news, ISIS claimed responsibility for the explosions yesterday in Qasem Soleimani's tomb in Iran. 95 people are confirmed dead in those 2 explosions that are now attributed to ISIS. Iran is maintaining that it was carried out with the guidance of Israel. Moving on to the Houthi areas, the Houthis attempted to send an unmanned explosive ship towards ships in the Red Sea, which exploded. However, it did not cause any damage to ships. It exploded too far away. More importantly, the U.S. stated today that there will be no more warnings given to the Houthis after yesterday's warnings that was issued by the coalition of ships to the Houthis to cease all their activities. This is reconfirming the reports from several days ago that the United States and the United Kingdom are planning a major offensive against the Houthis, and they were going to give them one final warning. Such a warning was issued yesterday. Today the U.S. stated there will be no more warnings. This may indicate that we're looking towards this retaliation or initiated operation that the coalition is going to carry out against the Houthis. Remains to be seen. Moving on to the political and general trends, Israel has hired Professor Malcolm Shaw to represent it in the ICJ, the International Court of Justice. The case is being brought where South Africa is charging Israel with genocide and is going to be debated next week. Shaw is a British expert in international law and has appeared before many international tribunals. Israel is also considering sending or appointing one of the judges in the tribunal. South Africa has the right to do that as well. This case is going to be debated, or the initial preliminary hearings are going to be debated next week on Thursday and Friday. Other news, the U.S. Special Envoy to the area, Amos Hochstein, met in Israel today with Defense Minister Gallant and with other security officials. Gallant emphasized to him that Israel would prefer a diplomatic solution to the situation with Hezbollah. However, emphasized that if the situation is not resolved, Israel will operate militarily as much as it needs in order to resecure the northern border. Other news, the U.S. National Security spokesperson John Kirby called upon Israel today to release the funds of the Palestinian Authority, stating it is Palestinian money, and expressing grave concerns for the economic crash that may occur in the Palestinian Authority. This is something that has been a bone of contention since October 7th. Israel collects taxes for the Palestinian Authority. They were frozen after October 7th. Under the claim that they will end up in Hamas hands. Then Israel came under heavy pressure from the United States to release those funds. Minister of Finance Bezalel Smotrich refused. After that, Israel decided it would release the funds of the Palestinian Authority, when it was going to deduct the funds that would go to the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian Authority refused to accept them in that case. Right now those funds are frozen. The Palestinian Authority in the West Bank is facing a major economic crash. The United States is very worried about this. Now publicly the United States is calling upon Israel to release that money. Moving on to speculations regarding the future of the Gaza Strip. Defense Minister in Israel today, Yoav Gallant, presented the Defense Ministry's plan for the day after the war in the Gaza Strip. This is the first time that Israel has not just stated what is not going to be, but actually tried to lay out a plan, or the beginning of a plan, what might be. According to reports, this plan is going to be presented to cabinet and was prepared in consultation with the United States. According to the report, Israel will maintain security control and freedom of military activity in the Gaza Strip. However, Israel will not have civilian presence in the Gaza Strip and will have the ability to monitor any and all entrance of goods. He stated, and I quote, "After the war, Hamas will not control the Gaza Strip, and Israel will not control the civilian life in the Gaza Strip. In the Gaza Strip, Palestinians live, and therefore who will be responsible are Palestinian elements, under the condition they are not hostile towards Israel and cannot operate against it." Responding to this plan came under heavy criticism from the right-wing elements in Israel's government. Specifically, Bezalel Smotrich, who is the Minister of Finance and a member of the expanded cabinet, stated that this is a continuation of the policies prior to October 7th that led to the massacre, and that new thinking is needed. He stated that this has to include encouraging willful immigration of Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, complete security control, and the renewal of settlements. Amidst this, a senior member of the expanded cabinet also leaked to the press that Gallant's plan is just another suggestion and decisions will actually be made in the cabinet. It is very likely that that senior member of cabinet is one of these right-wing elements that is trying to scale down Gallant's plan and is simply stating this is one of the suggestions that may come up. Other news, Minister Gantz today stated that after the war, quoting, the fate of Han Yunis will be the same as a Kasbah in Nablus. The IDF will operate wherever terrorism is. What he is alluding to is that after the war, the IDF will still have the ability to go in and hunt down terrorists as it sees fit, the same way as it does in Nablus today, it will do in Han Yunis. Other news, Minister of Culture and Sports in Israel, Miki Zohar, also stated in an interview, and I'm quoting, we also need to discuss solutions of settlements in the Gaza Strip. Settlements are a good and welcome thing, and they have proven themselves over the years. We shouldn't discount this idea so quickly. What we are seeing is that as Israel is getting more and more pressured by the United States to actually come up with its day-after plan, we're starting to see the divides in cabinet. There are reports of a lot of tensions between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Gallant. Gallant seems to be leading the security approach, saying that Israel is not going to maintain settlements, is not going to enforce or encourage immigration of Palestinians, but instead is only going to worry about security and leave all civilian administrations to some sort of international force or a Palestinian force, whereas others are trying to push for Israel to maintain their control of the Gaza Strip and reestablish settlements there. That is my summary for the last 24 hours. As I stated, for the next 3 days, there will not be regular summaries. If there are any specific highlights, I will update them on my Twitter account. Otherwise, I will be back on January 8th.